When Dr. Maya Angelou wrote the poem Phenomenal Woman, she had my next guest, I believe, in mind. Dr. LaSaundra Booth is a phenomenal woman, music educator, lecturer, and conductor. And I cannot wait for you to meet her. We talk all things music education. She gives great advice to parents on how to look for a private lesson teacher. And we talk about all the inequities that occur for students of color, primarily Black students, in music education and classical music. And I should also preface this by telling you that at one point of this beautiful interview, she made me tear up. That's how phenomenal this woman is. And I cannot wait for you to meet her. So join me right now on Unmute the Voices. LaSaundra, welcome to Unmute the Voices. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to have you finally here on our show. You're doing amazing things in the music education space, which has been predominantly dominated by white men and white people for centuries. How does it feel to have this kind of newfound fame and be recognized for your excellence in classical music, but more specifically in the music education space?
It is a very humbling experience, but I'm very grateful for the journey, and I'm just so glad to be able to change the trajectory of the lives of so many youth in this space.
And I mean, when you're talking about changing the trajectory of youth in the music education space, what exactly are you looking to change?
Well, just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I started playing cello in the fourth grade. And the reason why is because I wanted to play the violin, Dr.
Oh.
Morris. I wanted to play the violin, but for some reason in the fourth grade, I got to class late, and all the teacher had left was a cello. So I get there, and I'm like, Miss Hagigi, I know what I want to play. I want to play the violin. And she was like, I'm sorry, LaSaundra, all the violins are taken, but I have this beautiful cello right here for you. And I look at the cello, and then I look at her, and then I look at the cello again, and I'm like, how am I supposed to fit that up under my chin? And she was like, she said, no, LaSaundra, you get to sit down with it like this. And I saw that when I got to sit down, but all the violins and viola players had to stand up. I said, I'm keeping this. So I look at my life. My mom was a single parent. I grew up in public housing, and the cello was my way out. I didn't have my dad. So when I look at where I came from, I said, cello changed my life. And it's been my mission to ensure that all youth, especially in the rural and under-resourced communities, get this opportunity. So when I say, yes, the instrument, playing an instrument can change your life, because it did mine. Who would have thought? Me from Greensboro, North Carolina, again, public housing. This past summer, I conducted on a program with Gustavo Dudamel. That's what I say when I say changing the trajectory. Cello was my way out. And for so many youth in different communities all across the world, music, the performing arts will be their way out.
Hmm. I felt that. I felt that. It sounds to me like it's a transformative experience that you want youth to have. Yes?
Yes, yes, yes. I believe because it happened for me, I believe that the same thing, and if not greater, can happen to other youth. And there are two that come to mind when I think about it. And I won't say their names to protect their privacy, but one just texted me today and said, I'm on my way to audition for Northwestern University. Another student is full scholarship at John Hopkins. And both of those students I started on cello. So when I think about, changing the trajectory for them, everybody's is different. For them, they want to do music for as a career. But for somebody else, they just like the idea of building community. Maybe they're not going to be professor at a university, but they want to be a lifelong music maker. So
Mm.
that's what it is. It is, fulfilling their joy through instrumental music.
Wow. Who was it that helped you? I mean, you talked a little bit about your fourth grade teacher, but were there other mentors or other people who inspired you that helped you kind of realize this transformation of how to pass it on to others?
It was my high school, or it is my high school orchestra teacher, Mr. Jesse Suggs Jr. out of Greensboro, North Carolina. He is still a mentor to me to this day. He's also board chair for Wake Forest Community Youth Orchestra, but he is the one who taught me not just about, how to become a better musician, but how to love people. He taught
Mm.
me about how to ensure that all humans are cared for and respected. When I was 16, I got a case of the chicken pox, and I never get sick. Like my mom, she was like the castor oil. We had to take all our vitamins, so my mama didn't play. Okay, so when I got the chicken pox, it was a shock because none of us had ever had any of those, childhood diseases. Do you know Mr. Suggs was the only teacher that came to my house to see about me? And it is because he did little things to show that he cared. It was him who got me the audition with Dr. Timothy Holly at North Carolina Central University,
Yeah,
where I went to
too.
do my undergrad. And in that meeting that Mr. Suggs set up between Dr. Holly and I went to Durham to have a lesson with Dr. Holly. In that lesson, Alan Nielsen, who was the conductor of the Raleigh Symphony, called Dr. Holly to see if he could play a gig. Now, mind you, I'm 17 years old, senior in high school. Dr. Holly says, I'm sorry, Alan, I am not available, but there's a student in my office who's more than capable of doing this gig. And I got my first job with the Raleigh Symphony at 17 because of that meeting that my high school orchestra teacher set up with Dr. Tim Holly. And I said, you mean to tell me that y'all are going to pay me to play this cello? Oh, yeah, major changed. I'm going for music. And that's what did it. So
Wow.
to have people in your life like Mr. Suggs to say, hey, you can do this. Because I had never thought about what am I going to do for college. I thought that I was going to go to the police academy because that's all I wanted to do until
Wow.
That meeting, I said, no, I'm not going on the streets. I'm going to play the cello. And that changed my whole life.
There is so much to unpack with that. That is just so beautiful. I love hearing stories like that. And shout out to Dr. Tim Holly, I mean, who is such a gem in the classical music space and more specifically in the Black classical music space. Shout out to him because
Yes.
he's a fan of mine, or I'm a fan of his rather, and I love him, and I love hearing stories of Black excellence, and how transformative that is. With the fact that you have had this Black mentor, and I don't know if Mr.
He is.
Suggs. Okay, so you've had two Black mentors who persuaded you and kind of opened this pathway for you to go down in music and have a successful career in music education. So my question is, why is music education so segregated? Why is it that more Black youth, more students of color fall through the cracks and aren't given these types of opportunities? Why is that?
That is a wonderful question. It's a system. It's been set up that way. It has nothing to do with you or me. It's just what has occurred. For example, because I could have gone to University of North Carolina at Greensboro, but Mr. Suggs encouraged me. He said, look, you go and study with someone who looks like you that can give you what UNCG could not do. Now, I did go to UNCG for my master's, and I'm not talking against either school, but the foundation that I got from Dr. Holly, that was the first time that I ever knew that you could do a whole dissertation on the music of BIPOC composers. Dr. Holly's entire dissertation was cello music by Black composers.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was possible. So that is why there's a separation. It's because people like me who grew up, impoverished, the access to opportunities is inequitable.
Right.
It's unequal. And unless we have a Dr. Holly near us, Dr. Holly was about a 45-minute drive from me. Unless you have a Dr. Quinton Morris near you, we will continue to have these pockets where we're isolated and people don't know. But that's the blessing about your podcast, because it's going to go in your show, it's going to go to those places where we physically can't be. So we are breaking down those walls and those barriers. But if you look at, okay, why is there a separation? Well, what did your teacher learn in their music history class? I teach at the collegiate level, and I see how many music books have us represented in them. Even when I was in college, the Grout and Paliska, history of Western music, there was one sentence about Bologna, right? Now he's upgraded to a paragraph. So our contributions as a people and just BIPOC in general, we're not in the books because a lot of us are not yet writing the books. So when people like us get in position, which is shout out to Dr. Connie McCoy at UNCG, has a wonderful second edition of her culturally responsive teaching book. So when more of us, yes, our education part is great, but now let's start to write it down so that we can teach the next generation of teacher leaders and students about where they come from, about how our different cultures merge, and all the different contributions that BIPOC composers and musicians have made to the history of Western music.
Okay. We got to go off script just a minute because you struck a chord with me and we got to go there. Okay? So, right now, and this is totally my opinion, but I'd love to get your opinion on this. There's a push for symphony orchestras to become more diverse, to create more access for Black players to be able to play in their orchestras and also be tenured in those symphony orchestras. And I am 150% behind that. However, I have an idea of how to diversify symphony orchestras and just the whole classical music sphere.
Okay.
There are two institutions in the world that are the most dominant that classical music is an active participant in. One is the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second is academia. So when you were talking about we need more people to write books, what we need really, I feel, is a army of people, of Black people and people of color and those who really care about real diversity, equity, and inclusion banging on the door of academia. Because if we can start to admit more students of color at the graduate level, I'm speaking specifically at the master's and the doctoral level, and provide them with the resources for them to become college professors, then we start to change the narrative of those who are able to get into symphony orchestras, those who are able to gain access to the higher level jobs that in academia or in any of the classical music areas or community that will enable us to create real change. And I feel that the academy is really where we can transform the whole landscape, because the symphony orchestra, the soloist, the music educator all come from the umbrella of academia. What do you think?
I wholeheartedly agree with you, which is why the Sphinx organization has just, I mean, not they changed my life, but with their venture funds grant,
Yeah.
there are two organizations that are working together to help shape that. So there's a whole leadership academy just for administrators of color that want to go into academia. And what
Yeah.
that program does, it not only, and I'm not, this is separate from Sphinx Lead.
Right.
This is a totally different umbrella arm of Sphinx Lead, where they are not only helping us get into academia, but not only when we get there, how to stay there. And I think
Yes.
that is one of the things that is going to help with everything that you just said.
Yeah.
So I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like being at the university level in music education, and you don't always have that support. And I'm just like,
No.
okay, well, I'm just going to enjoy the year that I'm here and try to touch as many lives as I can, So, but you are exactly right, and I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Mm-hmm. And it's lonely.
Yep.
It's lonely, being the only one at the table making those decisions, right?
Right.
Of, do you advocate for diversity and inclusion? Do you call out people's racism? Or do you hold your tongue because you don't want to lose your job?
It is a very, very fine balance, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not encouraging anyone to lose your job like that TikTok. You about to lose your
Lose your
job.
job.
We're not encouraging you to lose your job, but we are
Right.
encouraging you to use wisdom. So,
Right.
how I kind of use my platform is I change the materials. So now we do use Dr. McCoy's book on, culturally responsive teaching. So, you have to know how to navigate respectfully in these spaces. And I think that's a whole different uh, conversation for another time on how do we, especially as a woman of color, how do you navigate these spaces when,
Mm.
like you said, you want to amplify your voice, but you also know that, there is a system in place that we had nothing to do with. But how can we use our voice in a wise way to make the changes that we want to see?
Unmute the Voices is sponsored by Key to Change Studio. Key to Change Studio is a violin and viola studio located in Renton, Washington, which allows middle and high school underserved students living in South King County an opportunity to take violin or viola lessons. For more information, visit their website at keytochangestudio.org. Now, back to Unmute the Voices. You talked about your journey and having a music teacher both in school, in high school, who took you to your to Tim Holly for college, who you studied with. I want to talk about home, right? That there obviously needed to be some trust from your family and a little bit of belief that this was the avenue for you to get out. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of students of color, specifically Black students, taking private lessons and why it's important for parents to get their kids involved in private lessons?
You bring up a very, very great point. I am an advocate for private lessons, and here is why. My mom, as you all knew, single parent, she worked at a gas station, Conoco, which kept changing every year, but she could not invest in my private lesson learning. So I kind of made up stuff. I made up my own technique. I figured out how to hold the bow on my own. And then I just played that way. And as a public school teacher, we had a different teacher every year until high school, where Mr. Suggs, helped change my life. But when I got to college, I had to undo from fourth grade to 12th grade. I had to undo everything that I taught myself. So it was 4 years of learning how to play the cello again, which was I'm not going to say time wasted, but I had to learn how to play the cello all over again because Dr. Holly had to break so many bad habits, from bow
Yeah.
technique to, how I held my left hand. So if we as parents can find places in your area or even online where maybe there's scholarship opportunities or tuition assistance to get your students lessons. And if you still can't afford lessons, there are so many great cellists on YouTube or instrumentalists on YouTube out there that are posting videos that if you just Google right hand technique for viola, I mean, find these professionals on YouTube that you won't have your child do what happened to me, that they won't
Right.
have to go and unlearn.
But here's the thing, a lot of times parents, A, don't even know that there are private lessons available for their kids. And if they do know, then they don't really know where to go or the right questions to ask when they find a teacher. What sort of advice can you give to parents who might want their kids to take private lessons but don't know the first thing about it or the first thing in looking for a good teacher? What would you say to those parents?
That's a great question, because before you take your car to get service, you're going to look at those reviews. Before you go and you get your carpets cleaned, you're going to look at the reviews. Before the heating and air person comes in, you're
Mm,
going to look at that company's reviews. And so that's where I would start first. How do you know if a teacher is good? Well, check out their reviews. Ask the teacher for references. What is the teacher's track record for success with students, even that being students of color or students in general? How many of their students are going on? How many? And in a situation where you're going to a studio, is the child that came before you, is that child walking out happy? You know, how does that child look? Is the child crying? Do you hear while somebody else's lessons going on? Is the teacher yelling at the child? You know, our voices being elevated in the lobby. What are parents saying? So that's the first thing. Look at that teacher's reviews and then go from there.
wow, that's powerful. What can white educators do to break that barrier and build trust with parents and students of color?
One of the things I think, authenticity is key, because you don't have to have a college degree to read people. And I think that's one thing that parents may not, that's a gift and that's a skill. Use your discernment. So I would say to our allies out there, we can tell when you're genuine and we can tell when it's not. So the very first thing is to be authentic, to ensure that, okay, I want the best for your child. I want the best for, this student. Um, I would also encourage our allies to look beyond maybe the obvious, that there's saying about Captain Obvious. Look beyond the obvious and look and see what potential that child has. Another thing that I do, as a parent, because I have 3 girls and all of them take private lessons. So I think one thing that parents need to know is where your child is starting right now is not where they're going to end, may not end up there. So I'm great at starting children, but I know once I give them all that I have, I move them on to somebody else. And I'm okay to let them go. So don't think, as a parent, your child may start off with this person. Maybe they start off with a private teacher of color, and that private teacher moves them on to a teacher that's not of color because there's more access to resources that I can't give them, which is a prime example of what happened to my student that's, going to audition at Northwestern. When I gave him all that I could give him, I said, you are going international. I know it. I told him this in 7th grade. By 8th grade, he was international. By 8th grade, he was playing overseas. And I said, look, this is all I can give you. Now it's time for you to go on. So now he plays with a Chamber Music Institute that gave him a better cello than what we could give him, that is taking him all across the world. And that is the great thing about having allies, because their resources were far greater. They could get him on a plane. They could fly him to Europe. I couldn't do that. So I think it's a great, thing, like you said, to say, okay, how can we build trust? Just take care of our babies. Love our children, love our youth like you would love your own. And then once we do that, our students have a greater opportunities for success and greater opportunities that will change their lives.
What do you say to the white educators who are afraid, who feel threatened by Black culture, who are intimidated by Black excellence, who don't have the courage to make connections with Black students or students of color in their classroom? They're afraid of maybe losing their own sense of identity. What do you say to those educators?
Well, one of the things that I would say is I understand. I understand. I understand how you feel. I understand that there are insecurities within yourself that you just need to deal with. But that's okay. That is totally okay. It's almost like, you know, saying to a person, because you feel that way about me, I don't have to feel that way about you. I'm still gonna have open arms, and I think that's one thing that our colleagues who are non-melanated, that's one thing they need to understand about us. All it takes is a conversation, a miscommunication. Just try to get to know me. When you get to know me, you'll find out you're gonna like me. You'll find out that there is more common ground between us than there is that divides us. So we understand. Look, I'm at a conference right now. I'm at a conference right now where the room was it was a little stiff until I was just my authentic self. And then you could see the faces warm up. You could see, and then afterward, they're like, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know that all this music was accessible for my group." So all it is just give us a chance. That's what I'd say. Give us a chance, get to learn us. And look, don't try to do 5 people. Start with 1. Start with 1. And when you start with 1, then you'll learn, okay, now I can do 2. So find out where if you're not comfortable doing the whole class, just start with 1 kid. Start with 1 kid and meet that 1 child where they are. And then once you meet that 1, you'll gain the confidence you need to get your whole group, to reach everybody. And then you'll see change.
You are a phenomenal woman.
Hey!
Listen, when Dr. Maya Angelou wrote Phenomenal Woman, she had you in mind.
Oh, thank you.
You are a phenomenal woman.
Oh,
That was
that's beautiful.
beautiful. Seriously, listen, I'm going to make the pitch for you. This woman right here on Unmute the Voices, music educators, conductors, arts administrators around the world. Hire this woman to be your guest conductor, to be your clinician, to be your artist in residence, to be your guest lecturer, to be your scholar in residence at your university or conservatory. Because underneath all of what we have talked about today, this is a woman who practices empathy at the highest level. And you need to have her at your institution. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for being on this show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are amazing.
Thank you, as are you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
can I just take the time to give you your flowers?
Oh,
I just want to say thank you because you are showing us what next level is. And I just want to tell everybody, we can't despise humble beginnings. We're all in different places. But when I look at you and when I look at your work and when I look at how you're changing and touching so many children, it shows me what I can be in my little town, Wake Forest, North Carolina. But you're showing me what next level is. You're showing me what partnerships are possible. You're showing me what collaborations can do to impact youth. You have such a heart for youth in the community. And when I look at you, I see, okay, I can do that. I can do this. I can't give up because if I give up, there's so many youth that won't get what I can give them. But I can't imagine how I read your Facebook and I know how hard, well, I don't know personally, but I know some of the challenges that you share. And I know there are probably even private challenges that you have not shared. But I thank you for not giving up. I thank you for pushing through that. I thank you because I'm watching and I'm seeing what is possible for me. So thank you. And I just wanted to, take time to tell
you're
you
going to
that.
make me cry.
Thank you. And I mean that. I mean that whether it's, recorded or not. I mean
Yeah.
that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's an honor to do this work, and it's hard, and it's a lot. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot that I deal with that the public never sees. But I feel that as a citizen of this world, and that I have been chosen to do this work. And so the challenges that I have faced in my life and the many obstacles that I have faced, I feel has just prepared me for this moment to create change in the lives of other people. And so through this show, Unmute the Voices, through the work at Classical King FM and Key to Change, and then of course at the university, Seattle University, I am just, I'm honored and thrilled to be able to do it, and I never ever take any of it for granted. So I appreciate you giving me my flowers, and I also am humbled because I'm a huge fan of your work, and I'm very humbled and thankful to have partners in music education and in classical music who really understand the struggle of what we go through, because it's a lot.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. So
You're welcome.
thank you so much for being on the show. And I want to say to you as well, viewers, thank you for supporting Key to Change and We hope that you will have a great day. See ya.